Good morning, everybody, and I would like to say welcome to our colleagues from Britain, especially. Of course, welcome everybody, but especially those who came from so far, and express my pleasure to be again with them, especially my friend and colleague Julian Thomas, with whom I am in contact for several years now. First time he came here to lecture was in 2004, and with his volume on archaeology and modernity, it was quite an important moment for us. I would like to make a short introduction and then to move to the audience. But unfortunately, well, now it would be not in English or Portuguese, but in another language, an unknown language perhaps. But unfortunately I can't. I was asked by my colleague and friend Leslie McFadden to say something, and I fear that I can go into one of the two options, or say not so much as you expect, or say too much and take too much time and bother you with many reflections and aporias and the perplexions I have. So I will start, and we will see what happens here. Of course, to the title, I don't know when this title was created, but perhaps in a meeting when I had with Leslie, and she asked me for a title, so I said her thinking about prehistoric architecture today. But of course, this involves at least two concepts that have been much discussed throughout time: architecture and prehistory. What is architecture, in fact, and what is prehistory? And I recently went to Lisbon, and I listened to and I watched a very interesting video in the Triennial of Architecture in Lisbon, where some architects, some philosophers, some even an anthropologist speak about this problem of architecture, each exposing his own or her own opinion or idea about what is architecture, not only today, but what is architecture if there is something that we can abstract or if there is something that we can resume in this word architecture. It poses a problem not only today, but also when we go to the past and we try to understand what is architecture in the epochs as those we study. I mean, we study the third, second millennium before Christ, but it could be applied to any epoch of prehistory or even of archaeology. What is really architecture? Can we use this word in such a general and overlapping way? As for prehistory, I think it's more complicated, because of course prehistory depends on idea of history, and the idea of history itself is very, very debatable, as we know all. Many authors have tried to approach this huge problem, but I will a little bit try to be more brief than I would like to be, to try to concentrate on an Italian philosopher that I like very much. I am searching in several philosophers for an idea which is not a dogma or a closed idea, but at least for some inspiration. I'm trying to choose my own way in all this mess, because it's very complicated, in the sense that, as you all know, archaeology has a history. That history came to the endings of the 20th century, and in my opinion went into a wall and was blocked by a certain difficulty. And this difficulty, this so-called, so to speak, epistemological difficulty, has been in time coexistent with the professionalization of archaeology, especially here in Portugal. So we have a strange situation that could be described in three terms. First, or in three panels. First is the most part of archaeologists, or the people who call themselves archaeologists, are engaged in commercial archaeology, making what we know. There is sometimes some research, of course, in that. But of course, it's not the idea I had of archaeology when I choose this field, and I still don't feel well in this situation, especially in the condition of a teacher who needs to teach people for going to this, and this will be for them perhaps the best option, because the other option is to be with no job. So most of the people continue to do commercial archaeology, which practically makes very difficult for most of them to reason about what they are doing. They are just machines installed in this society, in this consumer and producing society. The other part of the archaeologists are, of course, common archaeologists, current archaeologists, some of them very, very distinguished, but most of them, as you know, are much concerned or much attached to a traditional archaeology, which is sometimes a mixture of several so-called schools or sources of inspiration that come from cultural history or processualism, or even so-called interpretative, post-processual archaeology, etc. So most of these colleagues do archaeology. Sometimes they do unproblematically, and they are very glad with that. That's good for them because they are happy. But some of them, I admit, are so inquieted as I am, in the sense that we don't know where we are going. We have lost a common ground for archaeology. And there is, of course, a short or a small group of people, and some are in this room, of course, that try to go beyond that wall and to turn around and to try to see other landscapes, so to speak. And this means to turn to philosophy, finally. And Julian Thomas, for instance, is one of the people who long ago gave that example to us. Turning to philosophy to be a philosopher? Of course not. I never wanted to be a philosopher. I think no archaeologists want to be a philosopher. But what we suddenly come to the conclusion is that philosophy, since the Greeks at least, not to speak before that, always have questioned the problems that we question too. We are in archaeology, at least some of we that are interested in these so-called theoretical problems, we are in archaeology to solve, or to try to solve, or to try to debate, or to work on things, on themes, on problems, on questions that are finally of a philosophical nature, if you want, if there is any philosophical nature in this life. So the problem is, what is our idea about time and about history in our European or Western civilization, and how can we try to overcome the notion of history itself that historicism created especially in the 19th century, and that we inherited, and which relates us to a narrative which is a continuum of temporality, a continuum and homogeneous time that comes from an origin and will no end, will have no end. We have inherited that from modernity. Well, precisely Giorgio Agamben has approached this problem long ago. In 1978, he published a very interesting book. I have only the Italian edition that I don't read very well, but the French edition, Infancy and History. I think I have the image just of the cover, just to project some image, because I thought archaeologists normally like images, so I need to take some image with me. So I will use this very, archaic technique to show the cover of the book, Infancy and History, because it's really a very important book. And in one of the chapters that is called that starts a section, and it is called Critique of the Instant and of the Continuum. He touches problems that are very, very important for us. What does he say? He says that the modern political thinking has been concentrated in history. As we know, history is something that is very old in our culture, but it was increased very importantly in the 19th century. And this modern political thinking has not elaborated a correspondent conception of time. I mean, we have worked on history, but we have not elaborated a conception of time that could go with that idea of history. The popular idea of time that most of archaeologists use is time as a continuum, punctual, I mean made of dots, as I hope that you understand my bad English, made of dots that are, in a continuum, an homogeneous continuum, something that comes from the past and goes to the future. This is the vulgar, current, ordinary representation of time. Of course, there was many people who tried to overcome this conception that it is also very current in archaeologists themselves, as I have said. For the ancient Greeks and Romans, of course, the time was something circular and something stable. And of course divided into instants, into moments with no extension. The now, which is correspondent to the geometrical point, the geometrical dot. The instant is always other and always the same. It's the end and the beginning of time simultaneously. That Greek conception of a continuum, quantified and infinite, made out of instants, of punctual instants, evanescent instants, was inherited by Romans and made the classical conception of history. In fact, that conception is, as Agamben stresses, in a way anti-historical, because there is not a real experience of historicity in the ancient world. The histories of Herodotus, for instance, try to struggle against forgetting, against trying to maintain memory, so going against the tendency to forgetting, and this is still our idea today. History, also Agamben stresses, has a radical id, which means to see, to look at, and represents the importance that already the Greeks